So my hope for these book reviews for myself was to keep them kind of themey still, but then I realized that the only kind of Victorian-esque looking dress that I had, I got rid of, and I tried to curl my hair, but it didn't turn out really well. It looks a lot weirder in person. So it's just a straight up review. This review was actually supposed to be for February, but then it ended up taking me way longer to read this than I really expected it to, about 3 months all told. But here it is, finally finished yesterday, Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. The story is about two sisters. One is kind of reserved and thinks a lot before she speaks and is very sensible. And she has a sister who's very outspoken and very emotional and is into music and just speaks her mind all the time. There's really three sisters all together, but you kind of don't really notice the other third one. She doesn't really do anything. They all live out in this place called Barton because their mother was married before, and he ends up dying, and his son from another marriage gets control of the estate, and his greedy wife is like, oh, they don't need to live off much. Even though your father said to take care of them well, he didn't mean to, give them the house that we want to live in, which was your father's. Just send them off to the small cottage and give them a little bit to live on, and that's fine. They move to this new place, and they have all kinds of callers coming in, and the greedy wife's brother, Edward Ferris, comes to visit them, along with, like I said, a bunch of other people. He's kind of very reserved, doesn't really speak his mind a lot, and he forms an attachment to Eleanor, the more sensible sister. Meanwhile, there's another guy that starts visiting who's very quiet and gentlemanly, and his name is Colonel Brandon, and he also visits, but he kind of falls for Marianne, the more outspoken, lively sister. But she's like, he's boring and too old to marry, because he's like 35 and I'm like 19, which, to be fair, that's a very big age difference. But one day, while walking about, there's a rainstorm and the ground gets muddy, and Marianne slips down a hill and is caught by this guy named John Willoughby. He hoists her up and carries her back to the house, and she falls in love with him because he's all into the arts and music and poetry, and he's very outspoken like she is, and they just hit it off. And they go along for a long time, and people aren't sure if they're engaged or not engaged, but they're mad about each other. All of a sudden one day, Willoughby just is like, hey, I have to go back to London on business. I'm not sure when I'll be back, if ever, so just kind of forget about me. Marianne is distraught and heartbroken and doesn't understand. Edward comes. First he's happy, but then he kind of gets all weird down to sorts too, and Eleanor's like, oh no, he doesn't have feelings for him anymore, but she didn't want to let anybody know because Marianne's already really upset about Willoughby, so she just kind of keeps it to herself. Then Edward leaves, and these cousins of the landlady come visit. Their names are, well, they call them the Miss Steeles, but it's Anne and Lucy Steele, and they're loud and uncouth, or well, Anne isn't so much, but Lucy is loud and uncouth. The Miss Dashwoods, Eleanor and Marianne, really don't like them that much. But Lucy goes to Eleanor and she starts talking on and on about how she's been secretly engaged for 4 years to Edward, and nobody knows about it or is to know about it because Edward's rich mom would cut Edward off and they wouldn't be able to get married. So they've been hiding it from everybody for 4 years. And Eleanor is heartbroken, but again, can't tell anybody because Marianne is still upset. Lucy swears her to secrecy. And at first, Eleanor doesn't even believe her, but she's like, oh no, he wears this ring that has a lock in my hair. Apparently, in this book, or in Victorian England, giving your hair away to guys was a big thing. So he has this ring of hair that Eleanor thought was her hair, but apparently it's Lucy's hair, and she has all these letters and stuff, so she pretty much proves that she is indeed engaged to Edward. And Eleanor is like, oh, okay, that's why he was acting all weird when he came here last time, because he's, freaking engaged. When winter comes, the sisters go off to London with another cousin of their landlord's. Marianne's all excited because Willoughby lives, around there, or has been doing business there at least. So as soon as they get in there, she writes a letter to him and is like, "Hey, what's up? Come visit me." And she doesn't hear anything back. And then she leaves for a little bit and comes back, and he has left his card saying, "Hey, I've been here, but oh, sorry, I missed you." Well, Eleanor and Marianne go to this party, and they see Willoughby there, and Marianne's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see you. Did you get my letter?" And he's all weird to him and cold and like, "Hello, man. It's so nice to see you," and acts like he pretty much doesn't know him. And she's like, Marianne, not being able to check her emotions like ever, is infuriated and wants an explanation, but he kind of ignores her and goes off to this other woman. Here comes light that Willoughby is engaged to this woman who is well-to-do. Marianne is like super heartbroken and finally confesses to Eleanor, no, they were never engaged, but Willoughby made it seem like they were going to be, and he had made plans and stuff, but obviously they aren't going to come through now. And then also comes light that Colonel Brandon, everyone this whole time thinks he has some kind of like love child that he supports or something on the side, but a long time ago he was in love with this woman, and she had a daughter out of wedlock, I think, or something. I can't remember. She had a daughter, and at one point Willoughby seduced her and knocked her up, and then just was like, "Oh, I'm not going to deal with this," and left. So Colonel Brandon takes care of this girl and her baby on the side in secret, so she doesn't have to be like cast out of society, which is really nice of him. And Colonel Brandon tells Eleanor this. So then the stupid Miss Steeles come to London too, and the older sister to Lucy Steele outs her and Edward's engagement, and everybody's furious, and his mother cuts him off and is like, "You're dead to me." He is like, "Well, I'm just going to become a priest so I can support us," and he goes off to Oxford and intends to hold true to his engagement to Lucy, which upsets Marianne even more because she was all like, "Oh, hey, you guys are a perfect match, Eleanor and Edward," and that was her only hope for true love, and then she finds out that he's engaged to somebody else, so it breaks her heart even more. Meanwhile, while they're in town, Willoughby gets married to the well-to-do girl, and then they go on their honeymoon, and they come back, and Marianne's like, "I'm done with this shit, let's just go home." So they're going home, but then they stop off to visit somebody else, and while they're there, Marianne gets, like, super, super sick, like, pretty much is on death's door. And while she's recovering, Willoughby just bursts the hell in and is all like, "Oh, I'm a jerk, but let me explain why I'm a jerk." And he says that, like, with the girl he knocked up, he was like, "Well, she wanted it too, it wasn't just me," and it was a youthful indiscretion. And then he says with Marianne, he does care about her, but he couldn't marry her without any kind of fortune. At first, he didn't intend to have her fall in love with him. Like, he thought they were just like, "Oh, buddy, buddy," and then they fell for each other. Either way, he's trying to get compassion, and Eleanor, being a compassionate person, is all like, "Oh, some of that's understandable, but I'm still mad at you. Personally, though, I think he's still a dick." But when Marianne is better, because she finally turns around and gets better, Eleanor finally tells her, like, "Hey, this is what Willoughby said," and Marianne's like, "You know what, I could never have married him anyway because he's immoral, and he does all this shady shit, so I wouldn't have wanted to be married to him anyway." They go back home, and then there's news from one of their servants that, "Hey, I saw Lucy in town, and she's married to Edward Ferrars." And Eleanor's like, "Are you sure? Because they weren't supposed to be married yet. He was supposed to become a priest first." "Yeah, Lucy told me herself to let you know, and I saw him in the carriage, so yeah, I guess they're back from getting married, and they're on their way to go visit people right now." So Eleanor is really upset. And then Edward comes in and is all like, "Hey, what's going on?" And she's like, "How's your wife doing?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm not married." And Eleanor says, "But Lucy said that you guys were married." And she's like, "Actually, no. She married my brother instead. Now he's disinherited, and I'm disinherited, but it doesn't really matter because my mom's going to forgive him because he was favorite." And he's like, "So yeah, that's done. And as it turns out, I actually came here to ask you to marry me." So they end up together and they get married. Colonel Brandon kind of like stays with their family, and he's a good guy, but he and Marianne end up getting married. Everything ends kind of happily ever after, and that's the book. It took me so long to read this because the way Jane Austen describes the characters and their relations to each other, it gets very confusing. There's a lot of cousins. I wouldn't say incest, but it gets very, very close with the family relations. Like, everybody is kind of related to everybody, and by marriage, it's kind of weird. But it gets confusing the way she writes sometimes. It took me about halfway through the book to actually get into the book. But I did like the romance of the time. I like how she described, like, they have drawing rooms and tea things, and they have all these social calls they have to make. I also like how her plot twists and how the dramas she create kind of could hold up today. This is her first book, Sensibility, and you can see the parallels between this and her other works later on, like between Pride and Prejudice. There was like a wild sister and more sensible kind of like opinionated sister in there. And then there's like a cad in some of her other books, and there's a cad in this one. And then also, if you know anything about Jane Austen's life, you can kind of see the parallels between her life. And I was surprised that she, a writer of that time period, brought up some kind of controversial things like divorce and having children out of wedlock, and not even a writer of that time period, but like as a woman, I'm surprised she brought up those subjects because they're kind of taboo, especially back then in the early 1800s. I ended up liking this book more than I thought I was going to, because at first it was just like a major chore reading it. But like I said, like halfway through, I started liking it. I'd give it like 3 stars, probably out of 5. And I might give her future works a try, maybe someday, but if I do, I'll probably watch a movie or something first, sort out who's who. But yeah, so that's my review for February of Sense and Sensibility. I'm going to try to make up for not reading anything in March by reading 2 books this month, and I'm starting with Water for Elephants, finally. So yeah, this is what I'm going to read for March. And then I got Dash and Lily's Book of Dares. That's just a book I've been wanting to read. I'm not sure if I'll count it as part of like the Lady Spies book club, or if I'll even be able to finish it before I finish this. But this is my next pick for my Lady Spies book club book, Water for Elephants, because Leslie and Duffy both read it. So yeah, that's what's going on. Alright, love you guys. I'll have hopefully another vlog up soon of me going to a garage sale. Bye. See, even Jane Austen, make it confusing to even explain your characters. Colin.